I had been married to Emily for 7 years, a relationship I thought was built on trust, love, and mutual respect. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I never expected what happened next. Emily suggested we try a 10-day separate lives trial to reignite our spark. She framed it as a relationship. Refresh something that would bring us closer. I reluctantly agreed, thinking it would be a brief experiment that might actually help. That first day alone left me feeling uneasy and abandoned when Emily did not call or text once. Before I tell you how this experiment destroyed my marriage, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you ever felt blindsided by someone you trusted. Emily and I met during our junior year of college at a mutual friend's birthday party. We locked eyes across the room, and I was immediately drawn to her vibrant laugh and the way she commanded attention without trying. We discovered we shared a love for indie films, hiking trails that most people avoided, and could talk for hours about psychology and human behavior. It was one of those rare connections that felt destined from the first hello. Our courtship moved quickly. Within 6 months, we were inseparable, and by graduation I had proposed during a sunrise hike at our favorite mountain lookout. She cried when I got down on one knee, the morning light catching her tears, as she said yes. We married at 26, surrounded by friends and family at a small vineyard ceremony that perfectly captured our personalities. The first 5 years were everything I had hoped marriage would be. We traveled whenever we could, backpacking through Europe one summer and road tripping across national parks the next. We bought our first home together, a modest 3-bedroom craftsman with a yard perfect for the children we planned to have someday. The house needed work, but weekends spent renovating side by side only brought us closer. Emily built an impressive career as a marketing executive at a growing tech company, while I found success as a software developer. We made a good team professionally, often bouncing ideas off each other over dinner. We had planned to start trying for children after our 3rd anniversary, but Emily wanted to wait until she secured her director position. I understood her drive and supported her decision, believing we had all the time in the world. Those early years were filled with inside jokes, surprise date nights, and the kind of partnership that made friends comment on how in sync we were. I never imagined anything could come between us. That is the hardest part of looking back now, remembering how certain I was that our love was unshakable. The first signs of trouble started about a year ago. The changes were subtle at first, easy to explain away with reasonable excuses. Emily began arriving home later from work, often well after 8, when she used to make it back by 6. Her phone became an extension of her hand, and she would quickly turn the screen away when I approached. When I asked about it, she would say it was work stress, claiming major projects required her constant attention. Our dinner conversations dwindled from hour-long discussions to brief exchanges about schedule logistics. Date nights became increasingly rare, with Emily canceling last minute due to unexpected work emergencies. The physical intimacy that had always been a cornerstone of our relationship faded to occasional, almost obligatory encounters that left me feeling more disconnected than before. Emily started attending more business events and conferences, extending trips that should have been 2 days into 5-day absences. When she was home, she spoke endlessly about her new work friends, particularly her team members, Alyssa and Marcus. She would light up describing their happy hours and inside jokes while our own relationship withered. I tried everything to reconnect. I surprised her with tickets to her favorite band, recreated our first date, and even suggested marriage counseling. Each attempt was met with a distracted smile or outright dismissal. She would pat my hand like I was an anxious child and say, "Everything is fine, Levi. You worry too much. I am just busy right now." But months of busy stretched into a year of distance. Katie, Emily's younger sister, became an unexpected source of support during this time. 3 years younger than Emily, Katie had always been the more grounded and emotionally intuitive of the two. While Emily possessed a magnetic charisma, Katie had a quiet strength that drew people to confide in her. She lived just 20 minutes away from us and had been joining us for Sunday dinners since she moved to the area after college. Unlike Emily's increasingly aloof demeanor, Katie noticed when I stopped telling stories at family gatherings. She would catch my eye across the table when Emily checked out of conversations to answer work emails. After her own marriage ended in divorce the previous year, Katie understood the subtle pain of watching a relationship disintegrate in slow motion. Katie and I developed a purely platonic friendship built on mutual concern for Emily. We would grab coffee occasionally, and she would offer insights into her sister's behavior from their shared childhood. Emily has always run when things get too comfortable, she once told me. She needs constant novelty, which is great for her career, but hard on relationships. I valued Katie's perspective and support. She was the sister I never had, having grown up with just my dad after my mom passed away when I was 12. Katie understood family loyalty in a way that resonated with me, and I appreciated how she never took sides, even when Emily was clearly in the wrong. The 10-day separate lives proposal came after a particularly quiet dinner one night in March. Emily had been pushing her food around her plate, barely making eye contact. When I asked if everything was okay, expecting the usual dismissal, she surprised me by placing her fork down deliberately. "I think we need to try something different," she said, her voice oddly rehearsed. "My therapist suggested we might benefit from a separate lives trial." I had never heard of such a thing and was immediately suspicious. "What exactly does that mean?" Emily explained it as a 10-day experiment where we would live completely separate lives. She would move into an Airbnb downtown. We would have no contact, no calls or texts, and both be free to socialize however we wanted. She presented it as a way to appreciate each other again, to remember why we chose each other in the first place. "Think of it as a relationship. Refresh," she said, reaching for my hand across the table. "We have become too dependent on each other. A little space will help us come back stronger." I had so many questions. Who would look after her plants? Should I still feed her fish? What would we tell our families? But the bigger question loomed unspoken. Was this the beginning of the end? When I suggested couples therapy, instead, Emily's expression hardened. "If you are not willing to try this, then maybe we need to consider something more permanent." The threat hung in the air between us. It felt like emotional blackmail, but I was too afraid of losing her to call it out. I reluctantly agreed, and the preparations for our temporary separation began with painful efficiency. Emily packed methodically, taking exactly what she would need for 10 days, no more. I watched as she rolled her suitcase to the door, wondering if she would ever really come back. "It is just 10 days, she said, kissing my cheek lightly before leaving. "We will be fine." But as the door closed behind her, a hollow feeling settled in my stomach. Something felt irreversibly wrong. The first day alone in our house was surreal. I woke reaching for Emily before remembering she was gone. The silence was oppressive. Every creak and hum of the house amplified without her presence. I checked my phone constantly throughout the morning, half expecting Emily to break the no-contact rule with at least a good morning text. Nothing came. I tried to work from home but found myself unable to focus. By lunchtime, I was pacing through rooms that suddenly felt too large. Out of habit, I opened Instagram and immediately regretted it. Emily had posted a story from an upscale bar downtown, surrounded by coworkers, glass of wine in hand, looking happier than I had seen her in months. The caption read, "Freedom Night 1, with a celebration emoji. My heart sank as I stared at her smiling face. This did not look like someone missing their husband or contemplating the strength of their marriage. This looked like someone celebrating an escape. By evening, the loneliness had become unbearable. I called Katie, breaking my own rule about not involving family in our marital problems. She answered on the second ring. "Levi, everything okay?" I tried to keep my voice steady as I explained Emily's separate lives experiment. Katie was silent for a long moment. "That is not a real therapeutic technique," she finally said. "At least not one any ethical therapist would recommend." Her words confirmed my suspicion that this was never about strengthening our marriage. When Katie offered to bring dinner over, I accepted gratefully. I needed a friendly face, someone who knew Emily, and could help me make sense of what was happening. As day one of our trial ended, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the empty space beside me, a physical representation of the void, growing in our relationship. I wondered what day 10 would bring, never imagining the complete destruction that awaited us. The next 2 days followed a similar pattern of growing unease and suspicion. I tried to immerse myself in work projects, but concentration remained elusive. Every few minutes, I found myself checking my phone, hoping for a message that never came. The separate lives experiment was revealing far more than I wanted to see. On the evening of day 2, my friend James called to check in. During our conversation, he mentioned something that made my stomach drop. I was not going to say anything. He began hesitantly. But since you guys are doing this separate thing anyway. I saw Emily at Riverside Lounge last night with a guy from her office. Marcus, I think. They seemed pretty close. The name struck me like a physical blow. Marcus was the coworker Emily mentioned constantly in recent months. Always Marcus had this brilliant idea, or Marcus was so funny at happy hour. James apologized for being the bearer of bad news, but I thanked him for his honesty. After hanging up, I spent hours researching separate lives, trials online, finding nothing from credible therapeutic sources to support such an approach. By day 3, a gnawing suspicion had taken root in my mind. Katie brought over homemade lasagna that evening, concern evident in her eyes as she took in my disheveled appearance and the untouched coffee mugs accumulating on the counter. You need to document everything, she advised as we ate at the kitchen island. Dates, times, anything that seems off. Trust your intuition here, Levi. After she left, I remembered that our iPad still had Emily's account synced from when she used it for work presentations. With a sick feeling of dread, I opened her message backup and discovered several deleted text threads had been partially restored in the cloud. The fragments I found were enough to confirm she had been planning this separation for weeks, but not enough to reveal the full extent of her deception. Days 4 and 5 brought even more disturbing revelations. While organizing financial documents in preparation for whatever came next, I discovered a hotel receipt from 3 months earlier. Dated during a weekend, Emily claimed to be at a marketing conference in Seattle. The hotel was local, just 30 minutes from our home. The confirmation showed a room booked for 2 adults. Further investigation of our joint credit card statements revealed dinner for 2 at an expensive restaurant the same weekend. Along with purchases from a lingerie store I knew Emily never frequented for me. Each discovery was another crack in the foundation of trust our marriage had been built upon. Katie came over again on day 5, bringing takeout and a level-headed perspective that kept me from spiraling completely. Together we discovered Emily had created a secret Instagram account under a slightly altered version of her name. The account followed only 20 people, including Marcus, and contained photos dating back 6 months. Weekend trips I thought she had taken with female colleagues featured subtle evidence of male companionship. A dress shoe, visible in a hotel room. Mirror, a masculine watch, on a restaurant table. She has been seeing him for at least half a year, Katie said gently, putting her arm around my shoulders as I slumped against the couch. I am so sorry, Levi. My world was collapsing. The reality of my marriage had been an illusion, a performance maintained, while Emily built a parallel life with someone else. The 10-day trial suddenly made perfect sense, not as relationship maintenance, but as a trial run for separation. By day 6, I could no longer contain my need for answers. I drove to the address of the Airbnb. Emily had mentioned in passing a modern apartment building downtown. I texted her that we needed to talk in person, that the no-contact rule needed an exception for the sake of our future. Her reply was immediate and cold. We agreed to the rules. No contact for 10 days. Please, Respect the boundaries of our agreement. When I pressed mentioning the evidence, I had found her tone shifted dramatically. You went through my private accounts. You are tracking my location. This is exactly why I needed space from you, Levi. You are controlling and invasive. The accusation stunned me. In 7 years, Emily had never once described me as controlling. I sat in my car, outside her temporary home, for nearly an hour, hoping she might come out, that we could talk face to face and clear the air. She never appeared, though I spotted her silhouette moving behind the curtains of a second-floor apartment. I finally drove home, hands shaking on the steering wheel. That night, I drank myself into a stupor, something I had never done before. The combination of betrayal, gaslighting, and helplessness overwhelmed my usually steady emotional state. Katie found me the next morning surrounded by empty beer bottles and the scattered evidence of Emily's affair. She had come by to drop off breakfast using the spare key we had given her years ago for emergencies. Seeing my condition, she immediately switched to caretaker mode, brewing strong coffee and opening windows to air out the stale alcohol smell that permeated the room. You cannot go through this alone, she insisted, cleaning up around me despite my protests. Let me help you. Katie stayed on the couch that night to ensure I did not drink myself into oblivion again. The next morning, she accompanied me to a consultation with a divorce attorney, taking notes when my mind wandered during explanations of property division and spousal support. Her presence was a steadying force during the most turbulent period of my life. We began organizing the documents the lawyer requested, creating timelines, and gathering evidence of Emily's deception. The process was painful but necessary, like cleaning an infected wound. In those days, Katie and I developed a friendship independent of her relationship with Emily, built on mutual respect and shared emotional intelligence. But our increased time together did not go unnoticed. Neighbors saw Katie's car in the driveway at early morning hours. Friends noticed her protective stance beside me when we grabbed coffee at local spots. The whispers began rumors that would later fuel Emily's delusions. On day 6 of our separation, Emily returned unexpectedly to the house to collect more clothing and personal items. She used her key without warning, walking into the living room, where Katie and I sat surrounded by financial statements and property documents. Emily froze in the doorway, her eyes darting between us and the papers spread across the coffee table. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice tightly controlled. "We are just getting organized," I said, standing to face her. Katie has been helping me sort through some things. Emily's laugh was sharp and humorless. "I bet she has. How convenient that my sister is here at 10 in the morning on a workday, looking very comfortable in my home." Katie stood as well, maintaining a deliberate distance from me. "Emily, this is not what you are thinking. Levi needed help with paperwork. That is all." Paperwork. Emily moved closer, snatching up one of the documents. Her eyes widened as she recognized our prenuptial agreement. "You are planning to divorce me. After less than a week apart, you have been planning to leave me for months," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "The hotel receipts, the secret Instagram, Marcus. I know everything, Emily." The color drained from her face, but only for a moment, before rage replaced shock. "You went through my things and brought my sister into it. The two people I trusted most conspiring behind my back. There was no conspiracy until you created one," I said, pulling out my phone to show her the evidence I had compiled. "You have been seeing Marcus for at least 6 months. This separate lives trial was never about saving our marriage." Emily's gaze shifted from me to Katie, her expression hardening. "How long has this been going on between you two? Were you waiting for a chance to move in on my husband, Katie? Was your divorce just a convenient way to play the victim while you set your sights on Levi?" Katie gasped. "That is insane, Emily. I have been trying to help you both save your marriage until we realized you were cheating." "Save it?" Emily spat. "I see exactly what is happening here. You both think I am stupid, but I am not. You will regret this, Levi. I promise you that." She grabbed a few items from our bedroom, and stormed out, slamming the door with such force that a framed photo fell from the wall and shattered. Katie and I stood in stunned silence. The broken glass, a fitting metaphor for the state of my marriage. Over the next 2 days, Emily launched a calculated campaign to control the narrative of our separation. She posted cryptic social media messages, implying betrayal without specifics, positioning herself as the victim of unspecified treachery. She called my parents, telling them I was having a mental breakdown and making irrational accusations. Several mutual friends received carefully edited screenshots of text conversations, stripped of context, to suggest impropriety between Katie and me. The Sunday family dinner at Emily's parents' home became the battlefield for the final confrontation. I had considered not attending, but Katie insisted we face the situation head-on together as family. We arrived to find Emily's parents, Thomas and Diane, visibly uncomfortable but welcoming. They had always treated me like a son, and seemed torn between their daughter's conflicting accounts. We had just begun an awkward meal when Emily arrived, clearly intoxicated and immediately confrontational. She stumbled into the dining room, pointing an accusatory finger at Katie and me. "Here they are, the happy couple," she slurred. "Did you tell Mom and Dad about your affair?" Yet Thomas stood immediately. "Emily, that is enough. Sit down and have some water. You are defending them," she shouted. "After what they did to me." Diane tried to calm her, but Emily shook off her mother's touch. "You all need to know the truth," she announced, swaying slightly. "Katie is pregnant with Levi's baby." The absolute silence that followed was deafening. Katie's fork clattered against her plate as she stared at her sister in shock. "That is completely false." Katie finally managed her voice, trembling. "I am not pregnant, and there has never been anything between Levi and me. I will take a test right now, if that would help." Emily laughed, a high, unnatural sound. "Of course you would deny it. You have both been lying for months. This whole separate lives thing was a test, and you failed Levi. You ran straight to my sister the minute I was gone." "Emily," I said, as calmly as I could, "the separate lives trial was your idea, not mine. And you have been seeing Marcus for months. I have proof. Marcus left me." She suddenly wailed, tears streaming down her face. "He used me, and then decided to go back to his ex. And now I have no one, because my husband and sister are sleeping together." Her outburst shifted from anger to despair in seconds. She grabbed a wineglass and hurled it against the wall, then sank to the floor sobbing. When Thomas tried to help her up, she began hitting his chest with closed fists, screaming incoherently about betrayal and abandonment. Emily's behavior escalated until she was threatening to hurt herself, pulling at her hair and scratching her arms. Her parents exchanged alarmed looks before Thomas made the difficult decision to call emergency services. When Emily heard him on the phone, she became even more frantic, trying to leave the house while making claims that we were all conspiring against her. The paramedics arrived within minutes, quickly assessing that Emily was experiencing a severe mental health crisis. They spoke to her in calm, measured tones, but when she continued to resist, they determined she needed immediate psychiatric evaluation. As they prepared to transport her, Emily became briefly lucid, looking directly at me with sudden clarity. "I stopped taking my pills months ago," she said quietly. "Everything was too flat with them. I wanted to feel something real again." It was then I learned Emily had been prescribed medication for bipolar disorder in college, but had kept her diagnosis secret from me throughout our relationship. She had managed her condition with medication and therapy for years, but apparently had decided to discontinue treatment without telling anyone. The revelation stunned me. In 7 years of marriage, she had never once mentioned bipolar disorder. I thought back to patterns I had attributed to her dynamic personality. The late nights of inspired work, followed by days in bed, claiming exhaustion. The impulsive decisions and occasional spending sprees I had written off as her enjoying life to the fullest. All the signs had been there, but I had misinterpreted them through the lens of love. In the days that followed, the complete picture of Emily's condition emerged through conversations with her parents and her psychiatrist with Emily's permission. She had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder at 19 after a manic episode during her sophomore year of college. With medication and therapy, she had stabilized and managed her symptoms effectively for years. About 8 months ago, she had begun to feel emotionally restricted by her medication and gradually reduced her dosage without telling her doctor. The affair with Marcus had started during a hypomanic phase characterized by increased energy, decreased need for sleep, and impaired judgment. When Marcus ended things, it triggered the beginning of a mixed episode with both manic and depressive features, culminating in the psychotic break at her parents' home. She created an elaborate alternate reality, her doctor explained during a family meeting Emily had requested. The separate lives trial. The pregnancy accusation. These were manifestations of her condition, not reflections of her true character. I struggled to separate Emily's actions from her illness. How much of her behavior was the disorder, and how much was the real Emily? The affair had begun before she stopped her medication completely. The lies and manipulation had been sustained over months. Could I attribute all of that to her mental health? Despite my confusion and hurt, I visited Emily in the psychiatric facility. She was heavily medicated at first. Her usual animation, replaced by slow movements and slurred speech. As her medication was adjusted, glimpses of the woman I had married began to return. During my third visit, she was clear-headed enough for a real conversation. We sat in a small garden area within the secure facility, other patients and their visitors scattered at tables around us. "I am so sorry, Levi," she said, her eyes filled with tears. "I destroyed everything. You were sick." I offered, still uncertain how much grace I could extend. She shook her head firmly. "My illness explains my behavior but does not excuse it. I lied to you for years about my diagnosis because I was ashamed. Then I lied about Marcus because I was selfish. I cannot blame everything on being bipolar." Her honesty was refreshing after months of deception. We talked for hours that day about what had happened about Marcus, who she admitted had ended their relationship when he realized the extent of her instability, about her unfounded suspicions regarding Katie and me, and about our future. "I do not expect you to stay married to me," she said finally. "I would not want you to, after what I put you through." It was painful to acknowledge, but I agreed. Too much had been broken to rebuild. We decided to proceed with divorce, amicably, with Emily's parents mediating to ensure fairness, given her vulnerable state. The 10-day trial that was meant to be temporary had permanently altered the course of our lives. As Emily focused on her recovery, I began my own healing journey. I started therapy to process the trauma of watching my marriage disintegrate so dramatically. My therapist helped me recognize that while I had missed signs of Emily's condition, her decision to hide her diagnosis had made it nearly impossible for me to understand what was happening. I maintained an appropriate distance from Katie to avoid fueling any lingering delusions Emily might have. Though we spoke often by phone, she too was processing her own complex feelings about her sister's illness and accusations. Our friendship would need time and space to find its new boundaries. I decided to sell our house too, filled with memories, to be a healthy place for my fresh start. I found a small apartment near my office and began the process of rebuilding my life as a single man. I donated many of our shared possessions, keeping only what truly mattered to me personally. I joined a support group for family members of people with mental illness, finding comfort in the stories of others who had walked similar paths. Their experiences helped me understand that loving someone with bipolar disorder required a different kind of commitment, one that Emily had never given me the opportunity to make knowingly. Gradually, I rediscovered interests I had set aside during my marriage. I took a pottery class. Emily had always vetoed as too messy. I reconnected with college friends, who had drifted away during our busier years. I trained for and completed a half marathon, something I had always wanted to try, but never prioritized. Each new experience was both a distraction and a healing step forward. 1 year after the 10-day separate lives trial that ended my marriage, I can look back with perspective that was impossible in those painful first days. Emily continues her recovery, now living in a supervised apartment with other adults managing mental health conditions. She takes her medication consistently and has rebuilt her relationship with Katie, though things between them will never be quite the same. I have cautiously begun dating again, more aware of the importance of complete honesty in relationships. I am upfront about my past and what I have learned from it. And they too. The experience has made me more attuned to authentic communication and the subtle signs when something is amiss. The most important lesson I have taken from this experience is the danger of ignoring your intuition. I knew something was wrong long before I discovered the affair. I felt the shift in our relationship, but allowed myself to be placated by excuses and reassurances. I will never again dismiss that inner voice warning me when something does not feel right. I also learned that sometimes love requires professional help. Mental health conditions are medical issues, not character flaws. With proper treatment, many people manage conditions like bipolar disorder successfully and maintain healthy relationships. The tragedy of my marriage was not Emily's diagnosis, but her decision to hide it and then abandon her treatment plan without involving me as her partner. Forgiveness has come slowly, but steadily. I have forgiven Emily not for her sake, but for my own peace. I understand now that she was fighting battles I knew nothing about, though I wish she had allowed me to be her ally, rather than keeping me in the dark. If you have ever experienced a relationship breakdown due to hidden mental health issues, I would love to hear your story in the comments. Your experiences might help others recognize warning signs I missed. If this story resonated with you, please hit subscribe and share with anyone who might benefit from these lessons. Remember, loving someone means accepting all of them, including the challenges they face, but that acceptance can only begin with honesty. Thank you for listening, and I wish you relationships built on truth and mutual support.